This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour being brought to you by our great friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews. The best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, lots and lots of snacks. Six great flavors of slushies. Rosler peanuts freshen out every day. Crown Royal, High Noon, Jack Daniels. They have ready-to-drink cocktails now. And the pickle bar led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed, second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. I want to pass along two passings for you. One has some local interest to it, and that is that of Dave Yukelson. Uke was sports psychologist, but sports psychologist. Did a lot of work here at Penn State, a lot. And not only that, in living in this town, it turned out that my sons and his sons were on parallel paths and played Little League and Babe Ruth baseball together. And Uke and I coached some of those games together along the way. And his sons, I coached Adam and Josh, were just two great young people to coach. I mean, great people. Marlon and Dave did such a great job raising them. And then he did a lot of work with Pat Flannery, and Pat knew him so well. And then last week, I saw Dave and his son at UCLA. They came out to the game at Pauley Pavilion. It was so great to see him. And I thought he looked pretty good. But he had cancer surgery last week. And Pat told me when we were at Wisconsin, he says, hey, by the way, he says, Uke didn't come out of it so well. He says, he's really struggling right now. I said, hey, oh boy. Well, then Dave passed away. And I can't say enough good things about him. I'll tell you one funny story about him. It's back, I don't know, it has to be like 1990 or 91 or whatever, somewhere in there. And Susan Ray had to be 91, I think. And I was in the hallway at Rec Hall, and I was walking down the hallway because I had to go to the back area to talk with somebody. And he was in the hallway talking with Susan Robinson, who's now Susan Robinson Fruchtel. And he's going through what she should see when she shoots a free throw, the front of the rim, visualize the ball going through the hoop. And you know me, Todd. What did I do? I turned around and said, Uke, she's a 2,000-point scorer. I said, just let her fly. I said, she knows what to do. He goes, oh, yeah, I know. It's like, but that was just me being a wise guy. And, yeah, so Dave Yukelson, so sorry to hear about his passing, and our deepest condolences to Marla, the entire family. You know, and of course, I know Adam and Josh. I mean, just great family. Big loss. Then there's this one. Did you see Junior Bridgeman passed away?
I did see that. I was stunned by one of the facts in that.
Well, there's a lot to talk about here that every single athlete needs to understand his life and his career. Junior Bridgeman was a terrific player at Louisville. Terrific player at Louisville. And He was on the 1975 Final Four team. So he's the 8th overall pick in the NBA draft. Right? 8th overall pick in the NBA draft. He goes to the Lakers. Okay. Well, guess what the Lakers did? Eventually, the Lakers, was it 76? Right around there? 76, 77? They made a big trade. Junior Bridgeman, along with 3 other players, Dave Myers and 2 other guys, were sent to Milwaukee in exchange for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Oh, boy. Well, this guy plays a dozen seasons in the NBA, 10 of them with the Bucks. Okay? And here's a guy who was the NBA Sixth Man of the Year, right? In his career, averaged 13.5 points, 3.5 boards, 2 assists, 2.5 assists per game. At one point was the president of the NBA Players Association. He was a good player. You don't play a dozen years in the NBA unless you're good. And he made the All-Star team, and 10 of those 12 years were with the Bucks. Okay. Now this is where it gets interesting. Let's give the background of where Junior Bridgeman grew up. He grew up in East Chicago. And let's face it, not the greatest deal on the face of the earth to grow up there. He wanted to join the Boy Scouts. Junior Bridgeman did. But the problem was the membership was too high for his family to afford. You know what the membership was? $1.25. Now, again, this is in the 60s, okay? But the membership was $1.25. His family couldn't afford it. So Bridgeman spends his summers when he had the opportunity working odd jobs. He makes about $20 to $40 a week. He tries to make the money stretch out throughout the school year. When he's at Louisville, he works summers at a farm equipment manufacturer. He also worked at a steel cutting company. And he had the midnight to 7 a.m. shift at a Ford truck plant a couple of times per week. That's the kind of worker Junior Bridgeman was. In his career, now he plays a dozen years, goes to Louisville, 8th overall pick in the draft. Lakers then trade him to the Bucks in the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar trade. So he plays a dozen years in the NBA. You know what his top-out number was in a season? You remember, he played in the 70s into the early 80s. The highest number he made was $350,000 in a season. Now, you see all the ridiculous numbers now. He made $350,000 in a season, which had to look like gold to him based on where he grew up and how hard he had to work to get there. Okay? And believe me, I do know what Jack Ham's top-out number was with the Steelers, which I'll never tell anybody. And the reason I know is that he told me. He volunteered it. It wasn't like, it's like we're just talking. I mean, when you work together with somebody 26 years or whatever, you talk a lot about 1,000 things. Okay? But he made $350,000 as his best season. Remember, he didn't make $350,000 a year for 12 years. $350,000 was his highest number. All told, when it was all said and done, in a dozen years, he made $2.95 million. So total, he made $2.95 million in his career, and was good enough where the Bucks retired his jersey. I mean, I was in the Bradley Center looking at number 2 up there. It's now at Fiserv Arena, where they've now moved over to. All right? But then, this guy, hard worker, smart, everything. Okay? Takes that $2.95 million total that he earned, and remember, of course, that's minus bills and taxes and things like that. Okay? and he builds a fast food empire that at its peak had more than 450 restaurants nationwide. He then became a Coca-Cola bottling distributor. His territory, 3 states, and into Canada. He then took money and bought Ebony magazine. He bought Jet magazine, and he invested in NBA Africa. In September, Junior Bridgeman purchased a 10% stake in the Milwaukee Bucks. In February, just last month, Forbes reported that Junior Bridgeman's net worth surpassed $1.4 billion. $1.4 billion. It's unbelievable. After his playing days at Louisville, he did a lot of work coming back. And look, this is a self-made billionaire. Self-made billionaire. Junior Bridgeman. Family couldn't afford $1.25. $1.25 joined the Boy Scouts because they had no money. This is a self-made billionaire. Doc Rivers said this is that kid growing up wanting to be an NBA player, probably his dream, and he turned that dream into becoming an NBA owner. He's the exact model the league should use every day when talking to players, when talking to our young players. Long after his playing career, Bridgman spoke to NBA players, rookies, veterans, and entire teams about financial literacy, a topic that he was deeply passionate about after seeing a number of notable athletes across the sports face financial ruin. Bridgman always preached caution no matter what the salaries were. He told ESPN last summer, money can disappear. Whether it's $80,000 or $80 million, it can disappear on you. Bridgman also wanted athletes to consider the concept of generational wealth. That's the idea of players stretching their earnings into future generations for their family. Last year, he expressed to ESPN how proud he was of his family, his 3 children, and how they've become in various parts of the business empire that he helped build. As for basketball, he said, quote, "It was fun." People said, how could it be fun? It was. It was fun. I enjoy playing basketball. He says, but you know what? Life after basketball was fun. It was rewarding. He says, in fact, life after basketball was fun like playing basketball. It is remarkable what he did.
I believe I read that Michael Jordan is the richest NBA player and Junior Bridgman's second and Magic Johnson's third.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Okay. I mean, you know, he married Doris, still married to the day he passed away, and they have 3 children, Eden, Justin, and Ryan. This guy embodied the solid citizen, and it is an unbelievable story. When you come from nothing, now I shouldn't say nothing, because obviously his parents and his family, right, were right there, so you've got something. But they obviously instilled a work ethic in this guy. And he worked and worked and worked. And in an era where, okay, you know what? Let's take NIL. I'm going to get $1 million from NIL. Well, that sounds great. But what's the tax rate on that? On a 1099? 40 to 50%? On $1 million? So now let's just conservatively say you're down to $550,000. Right? Then you go out and you buy a car, brand new car, may run you $50,000. Well, now you're down to $500,000. Okay. And you keep buying stuff. Whoa. Do you need all that stuff? Do you need it? James Franklin, I've heard him often say, because he's had his players go through financial planning and also how to do your taxes. They have these players all the time. He says, I don't want to see the name Penn State associated with a player who ended up destitute after playing pro football. So I don't want to see that. And this is a story that everybody needs to know. As far as I'm concerned. And I think it's just important that as an example, where there are a lot of bad to mediocre examples out there, he wasn't one of them. Remarkable. Never in the same room with him. I watched him play, and I really liked him as a player. I thought he's a really good player, knows how to play. You could tell he knew how to play the game, because you can get by it maybe on talent at Louisville in college, but then you get to the NBA, and you got to have both talent and you have to have a brain to have a long-term 12-year career. So I always enjoyed watching him play because I thought he was really good. And, of course, there was more attention on him early in his career because he was in the Jabbar trade. Right? He's in the Jabbar trade. Well, because remember, the Bucks were an expansion team. And because they were able to win coin flip or whatever it was with Phoenix, they drafted Jabbar. Phoenix ended up with Neil Walk. Jabbar is a really good rookie season. The second season, the Bucks win the NBA championship in the third year of the franchise existence. Now in the mid-70s, 75, 76, you trade him. And you get Dave Myers, Junior Bridgeman, and I can't remember the other two guys they got. So Bridgeman has a lot on his plate. Like, you one of the guys worth it for Jabbar? He had by his own rights, an excellent NBA career. But he sure did do a lot with the wealth he acquired. And again, because it was the 70s and early 80s, they weren't making max contracts like they do today. His best earnings year, which is a very, very good year by anybody's standards, by the average person's standards, $350,000 is really good. As far as a pro athlete and an NBA, it's like, okay. Wow. But to me, that is a story that every athlete, especially football and basketball players, they need to hear that story. He came from nothing. And instead of lavishing himself when he finally made some coin, he figured out ways, how can I get more? Well, he got more to the tune of $1.4 billion. Remarkable. And believe me, he didn't just keep it to himself. He went around and he consistently talked to NBA players about the idea of being smart with your money, thinking long-term with your money, and not just in the moment. All right. The unfortunate part is that during what was an important segment, the suit tuned out.
He heard life advice and turned it down.
No, exactly right. You know, my understanding is the problem is he was online trying to get a Louis Vuitton bag. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
The new car game is really heating up in March at Sunbury Motors Kia. Lease a 2025 Kia K4LX for as low as $295 a month for just 36 months. Or buy it for as low as $21,884. Make a fast break to SMC and choose from 17 K4s. Sunbury Motors Kia has a 2025 Kia Sportage EX March sale price as low as $29,859. And it's a slam dunk with 26 Sportages priced to move. In fact, Sunbury Motors Kia has 122 total new Kias to choose from. Everyone's a winner with Kia because all new Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. Don't sit on the bench. Let's be alive in 2025 and up your new car game in March at Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Warranty is a limited powertrain warranty. For details, see retailer, go to kia.com.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
I will amend one thing I said about Junior Bridgeman. I'd never been in the same room with him. That's not true because actually I saw him play in the Boston Garden against the Celtics, against Larry Bird, McHale, and those guys, and Dennis Johnson. He played with Marcus Johnson, and Celtics won that day. That was with the '84 season when they were so good and won the championship. But yeah, I did see him play in person. Let's see. This half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. For Kia Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory. The Sunbury Motors Guarantee. They go over every vehicle, so it eases the buying experience. And it's one-stop shopping because between quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult, their service department does a great job of handling it all. At Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Let's see. Power conferences, NCAA working on plans for enforcing rules in the new revenue-sharing era. As part of the agreement to settle the 3 antitrust lawsuits, they've agreed to share revenue with the athletes starting with up to $20.5 million in 25-26. There's going to be more oversight. It still has to get final approval. The hearing is set for April 7th. The conferences and committee are working on 4 areas of implementation. 1, how schools that opt into the terms of the settlement will report what they are spending on revenue-sharing payments. And LBI software, which works with pro sports leagues such as the NBA, Major League Baseball, they've been retained to develop a cap management system. Next, they want to assess the legitimacy of third-party name, image, and likeness deals between college athletes and companies and organizations such as NIL collectives. The conferences are working with the accounting giant Deloitte to elevate whether deals are for valid business purposes. Under the settlement, all deals between athletes and third parties of $600 or more will be evaluated. Drafting new rules and clarifying existing ones related to the settlement, such as parameters for roster limits that will replace scholarship limits on a sport-by-sport basis, and creating a new entity to enforce rules, investigate potential violations, and dole out penalties when necessary. So there you go. Now, of course, they're still going to lobby Congress. They want a federal antitrust exemption because they want to slow down the legal battles. And at the same time, it gives them more power in negotiating with athletes, I think, if they want to get a collective bargaining agreement. So, there you go. There you go.
I still can't imagine it's going to go well the first time that clearinghouse rules that somebody's getting too much money.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Kenny Gainwell leaves the Eagles. He becomes a member of the Steelers. I would like to point out that the Eagles fans now, he's just another guy, which I've been trying to tell you. Also available right now is Miles Sanders. So he's available. So here are some of the players still available. Now, they rank them Tier 1, Tier 2, whatever The Athletic does. They don't have any Tier 1s listed. So they have 2 Tier 2s. Javon Hargrave of the 49ers and Stephon Diggs with the Texans. Tier 3. Zadarius Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Mekhi Becton, DeMarcus Lawrence of the Cowboys, Rasul Douglas of the Bills. Tier 4 guys, Keenan Allen with the Bears, J.K. Dobbins with the Chargers, but the Chargers did sign Najee Harris. Amari Cooper of the Bills, Russell Wilson of the Steelers, considered a Tier 4. Asante Samuel with the Chargers, Evan Ingram. Didn't Ingram just sign? He just signed with the Jags, right? I think he did. We'll see. Brandon Scherf for the Jaguars. Tyler Lockett. Tier 5, they have Kevin Zeitler. Old guys who can still play but could retire anytime. Kevin Zeitler of the Lions. Von Miller of the Bills. Calais Campbell of the Dolphins. Tyron Smith with the Jets. Eric Kendricks with the Cowboys. Nick Chubb of the Browns. Kyle Juszczyk of the 49ers. Tier 6, inconsistent or journeyman veterans who still have appeal. Youngsters with potential. Justin Simmons, Elijah Moore, Cam Robinson, Josh Myers, center of the Packers. Tyler Conklin, tight end for the Jets. Will Hernandez, guard for the Cardinals. Mike Hilton, cornerback for the Bengals. Maybe one of the... You want to talk about a corner who knows how to time up a blitz. It's him. Dante Fowler with the Commanders. Mac Jones, quarterback for the Jaguars. Yikes. Benjamin St. Juste, corner for the Commanders. Tier 8, veterans who might be near the end. Role players, former draft crushes who haven't panned out yet. Josh Uche for the Chiefs. I thought he'd have a better career than that, based on what I saw in college when he played at Michigan. Jameis Winston, Browns. Matthew Judon of the Falcons. Shaq Mason of the Texans. Brandon Cooks with the Cowboys. Kareem Hunt with the Chiefs. Stephon Gilmore now with the Vikings. Trey Lance, Cowboys. Yikes. He's 25 years of age. Wow.
What'd you say about Zach Wilson and somebody else yesterday? Trey Wilson fits that. You can't. Everybody will give you a shot when you're that high of a draft pick.
Yeah, Trey Lance. Yeah,
Lance.
yeah. I never understood it when they drafted him, and I don't know. I never got it when they picked him. When the 49ers traded up to get him, I was like, what are you doing? Now on the draft, according to CBS, now there are mock drafts all over the place. I could give you a mock draft, right? And mock drafts to me are everybody's guessing board, okay? But according to the CBS Sports.com draft board, guess who dropped out of the first round?
Shador.
Yep, Shador Sanders. I don't understand why. Only for this reason. It's quarterback.
I think it's interesting. They were very upset about how he met with some teams and his attitude, I think, at how it was. And it just kind of smells to me like the C.J. Stroud stuff where somebody's trying to get – I feel like somebody's trying to get him to drop so they don't have to trade up. And we'll get to closer to the draft, and not only will he be in the first round, one of these other guys ends up in the first round too. The NFL can't stop themselves from taking quarterbacks in the first round.
Yeah, I know. It is one of their issues. Let's see. Shador. Sanders.
Everybody's fallen in love with the Louisville guy now. Tyler Slough. I saw him up into the lower part of the first round in some places as well now.
I don't.
Does anybody remember Brandon Whedon?
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't he 27 too? I think Tyler's 26.
So, Louis Riddick says there's a smear campaign against him. Like, okay. And he told Dan Patrick that. Says that starts with his father, then it trickles down to him. People don't like flashy guys like that who can back it up. He says it's a smear campaign. Riddick says he's a top half of the first-round player. He says people have been at this game trying to talk certain prospects down for years, Riddick said. Dion is a lightning rod. That's where it starts. It doesn't even start with Shador. This starts with his father, and then it trickles down to him. He said it's been that way since I played with Dion back in '92. People don't like flashy guys who can back it up. They just don't. With Dion, he's always been a polarizing player to people who don't know him. With Shador, he has some of his father in him, there's no question. How could he not? He's the man's son. So Riddick's not crazy about it. Dion coached his son at both Colorado State and Jackson State. Deion Sanders said, I told him, first of all, don't believe nothing that they say. I'm just quoting him now. I don't want anybody to think I've gone off the deep English end here. Because people are going to criticize you, so you fall to them. That's how it is. It's positioning right now. So don't believe, as he says, none of that. So in other words, don't believe any of that. It's positioning right now. But he's speaking to guys that make the moves. So he's not listening to the media. He's speaking to head coaches, GMs, and all of that of the first three teams pretty much, because that's where we think he's going to land, somewhere in there. Now, Colorado's Pro Day, by the way, is next week. It is next Tuesday. And Travis Hunter will be there as well.
I saw this while we were on break. UNLV says it can only pay the first 2 years of Dan Mullen's contract, and then they're going by vibes over the last 3 years. I don't know.
Oh, boy.
It says they're $26 to $31 million in debt, and then one of the regents asked how they're going to pay for Mullen's $17.5 million contract.
Yeah.
Harper said he hopes to raise money through donations and increased revenue from football games to pay Mullen, hired in December.
God.
I'm sure Dan Mullen's excited to hear that part of it, too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, Look, finances are... This is why I bring this up all the time, and I know it drives the suit nuts that I talk money the way I do, because the reason I do is that it's a reality and it affects what fans see. Okay? So I'm talking directly to the fans here are the issues financially. And here are the pluses financially. And that's why I do it. And it's a situation like this. I keep bringing up in this $20.5 million, and in the increased scholarships, it's going to be about $29 million because now you're going to be paying for all these scholarships. Okay? So it's going to be about $28-29 million when it's all said and done. Okay, well, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, they can all come up with it. Because they're in the Big Ten and the SEC, and they can come up with it. Plus, they have brand names. And I keep bringing this up over and over again as an example. How's Pitt going to do this? Look at their TV contract. Look at their radio contract. I mean, look at their multimedia contracts. They're like, how are they going to do it? They're not going to do it based on ticket sales. And that's not meant to be a cut. It's a reality. That's not meant to be a cut. They play Clemson. I mean, the problem they have is when you play in the Steelers Stadium, the seats are all yellow, and they did an overhead shot, and there are all these empty yellow seats. They stick out. So how are they going to do it? How are they going to make up for it? Can't make up for it all in fundraising. And now you look at UNLV, and UNLV was one win away from being in the college football playoff. They lost that game at Boise State. They won the game. They're in. Now, whether they would have been a top 4 seed or whether it would have been Clemson, I don't know. I don't know how the rankings would have worked out off the top of my head as to whether they were in front of or in back of Clemson in the rankings. But, I mean, it's possible Penn State could have played them. Well, Arizona State would have been ahead of them. But, I mean, that's why we bring this up. You brought up about Dan Mullen. Most schools are in the UNLV position.
This is going to come to a head somewhere, I think, before we get this solved. And we're going to find out the consequences of one of these athletic departments literally running out of money, I think.
Yeah, well, as Greg Sankey said, like they just in the ACC did the unequal revenue share. And he said there's a history of unequal revenue sharing, which I have pointed out in the Big 12, right? With Texas. There's a history of unequal revenue sharing in those conferences. It just hasn't worked well for a long-term situation. Look how it worked out for the Big 12. And that's where it is. And for the UNLVs of the world, they're probably getting more media money now than they ever have. But in today's world, it's not even remotely in the ballpark of where it needs to be. It just isn't. So that's an issue right there. I don't know. It's I've talked about this for a long time, even before this House settlement and so forth. But just based on the multimedia deals, the SEC and the Big Ten have completely separated themselves from the ACC and the Big 12. Now look at the Mountain West. Good conference. They have good basketball, good football. But they can't make enough money to fight it out with other. And nor are they attractive enough as schools to get huge media deals. They don't have the brands there to do it. I mean, getting a guy like Dan Mullen to replace Barry Odom, who ended up going to Purdue, that's great. But can you blame Odom for taking the Purdue job? He's in the Big Ten. And I'm sure he knew what the financial issues were. Probably the tip-off should have been when they couldn't pay $100,000 to the quarterback in the NIL thing. I think it was $100,000. So, there you go. All right. We'll take a break. We'll come back. More in a moment. You're on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you and thank you for your years of patronage.